There's been so many great speeches around the world. There have been so many great ideas around the world, but yet very little execution. And guess what, ladies and gentlemen? Over the past 2 decades or so, borrowing from my experience as a young child advocate, very curious about the development of the world and the inclusion of children in decision making, to going overseas to study law in one of the world's top universities, to working in a top consulting firm in the United Kingdom, to joining one of Nigeria's most consequential commercial practice, and accidentally finding myself in not just the corridors of power, but in the rooms where decisions are being made. What has been lacking are two things, in my view. One, the skill set and technical know-how to push ideas to action. And secondly, and most importantly, the courage to drive these ideas into action and to make sure that these impact on our people. I'm starting this with a reflective story, and that story involves myself and a host of other young people that have built what is now to be known as Nasarawa's ascension from a mere civil service state to one of Nigeria's most competitive places to do business. In 2019, I was running a small commercial law practice out of Abuja and Lagos. And I met Governor Abdullahi Sule, then governor-elect, and he had a vision. He told me he wanted to transform and industrialize Nasarawa State, and I shared a couple of ideas with this outstanding engineer who was embarking on a journey in public service. I was 29 years old. I was very passionate about my career, and I was very much enjoying my life at 29. He gave me a task to join him in building and leading Nasarawa State's economic and investment. There was no blueprint, no template, no institutions, just a clear mandate to build. At that moment in Nasarawa State, if you go into Nasarawa State to do business, you'd have to deal with at least 11 institutions or more. There was no shared economic vision. There was no stipulated government priority. Nothing. Just a group of people wondering about how their lives can be transformed. In starting this journey, we realized that the state cannot attract what it isn't ready for. So we started to build readiness. How did we do? First and foremost, we came up with a blueprint, which is the Nasarawa Economic Development Strategy. And that blueprint was anchored on the need to improve the ease of doing business in the state, build centers of excellence. We found out that there were some remarkable existing work done that needed to be beefed up. We created institutions such as the Bureau for Public Procurement to sanitize the way government procurement was done. We beefed up the Bureau for ICT. The governor started the Human Capital Development Agency, but most importantly, at the heart of delivering this agenda, we started a brand new organization called the Nasarawa Investment and Development Agency. That agency became the one-stop investment center for Nasarawa State. But what is remarkable for me in building that agency was the first day I was handed in the appointment letter to set up that agency. The only thing we had was that appointment letter. But with my experience going through the journey, such as that of my very good friend, Ibrahim Zanna, I made a decision. We're going to build an agency that was different, and we're going to use the agency as a point of reference to build a new cadre of leadership for Nasarawa State. We wanted to build new sets of public servants that had the technical know-how, that had the passion, but most importantly, that had the courage to implement something very new. So we decided that no one coming into that agency was going to be above the age of 35. Today I'm 36. I'm wondering whether or not I should continue to be in the agency. Then things began to flourish in Nasarawa State. Agency started pursuing ideas, platforms, and initiatives. One of such key initiatives I'd like to share with you this morning in Yola is the Nasarawa Investment Summit. In 2022, having created the blueprint, having created institutions and the people behind those institutions, we decided to start creating our own marketplace. For the first time, we said we wanted to gather the world in Nasarawa State. A lot of people said it was impossible to do so because Nasarawa State didn't even have an airport that was functioning. How are global investors going to fly around the world and come into Nasarawa State? How are we going to convince them that Nasarawa State is a destination to go? Guess what? These young people from across the length and breadth of Nasarawa State, and of course the length and breadth of Nigeria, put together the inaugural Nasarawa Investment Summit with President John Dramani Mahama of Ghana as the keynote speaker. We had other investors, the biggest investors on the continent, like Alhaji Aliko Dangote, Rashid Sarumi of Saro Africa, and a host of other global leaders from global institutions. That small marketplace culminated in a $500 million investment commitment in Nasarawa State. There were a lot of pledges, but beyond the pledges, there was the need for us to make sure that all of the commitments at that summit are translated into reality so that the next time we call, people will answer. One of such commitments at that inaugural summit was a remarkable investment to build a technology village for Nasarawa State, a commitment to build first of its kind CNG plant in Nasarawa State, and a host of other investments. We came back again in 2024 with this same marketplace. And at this time, we were showing readiness, not potential. We were showing a marketplace that was giving results both to citizens and to investors. We pioneered an infrastructure fund. We ushered in a new public-private partnerships framework. But it's important and touching to me every time we signed a deal in Nasarawa is the look in the faces of the investors with the assurances that these young people are building something remarkable, a market that I can trust. In 2026, just a couple of weeks ago, we hosted the third edition of the Nasarawa Investment Summit. But at this time, what was lingering in our minds is not about the investment commitments that have been made and the investments that are flowing already state. The question has been, how do we sustain this? And how do we build a critical mass of our people supporting? And how do we build a political consensus so that bad politics doesn't change the principle that is transforming industries, that is providing jobs for our people? We got together and we called on traditional institutions, the political class, young people, youth groups to sign what we call the Lafayette Declaration. It was the first of its kind, community-led, community driven commitment to continuity. And what the Lafayette Declaration is saying is that the citizens are affirming and are committing that whoever becomes the governor or whoever assumes leadership of the state in the future, we have defined what the imperatives for our development are, and we've defined our economic growth trajectory, and there is no going back. 7 years of taking bold steps and translating a vision into a tangible economic impact has given us 2.3 billion United States dollars in investment into Nasarawa State, over 50,000 jobs created, laudable institutions set up, the IGR of the state jumping from 7 billion in 2019 to 37 billion in 2025. What this journey has taught me and what I'd like to share everyone in the room, especially all of us, the young people here, is that ideas are worthless without execution. Have you ever heard of anyone being given a prize for the best idea? No. Ideas don't cut it. You have to take a bold step to act. And I'd like to leave the stage this morning calling all of us to action. Every speaker that has come on stage so far this morning has talked about what I will describe as the action imperative. But I'd like all of us here leave this room with the thinking, with the idea that this action is a responsibility we must deliver to ourselves. Thank you very much.